do you think the entities were attaching themselves to him, or like how do you view it? Is it something where the entity finds they're traumatized and because maybe they're vulnerable and their defenses are down, or is it something that is grown out of trauma?
I think so. Yeah, I guess I would say that that they're because this veil, the way that I think it works, it's almost like an inverted world of ours, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so as that veil thins, think about it like in real space time, that there's another version of this, that there's an entity that's right here. There's probably an entity right here, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the question
They
is,
keep messing up the wires, and
that's what I'm saying.
You've
Yeah,
been watching,
that's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
And so as that veil gets thinner from time to time,
Yeah.
depending on things that are happening, and I have this whole theory that's not just my own, that I've seen other people talk about, but like, again, traumatic experiences thin that veil.
Yep.
And I think it comes all the way back of like, well, you have to ask a fundamental question: where does power come from? And I believe that there's only two sources of power in our entire creation, and that's good that comes from God and all things from divinity.
Yep.
And then there's evil or Satan,
Yep.
right? And that's just how I fundamentally view things.
Yep.
And so every single power, every single phenomena that occurs comes from one of those two sources.
Yeah.
And that gets into like this whole other thing about witches and all these different things. And so the next story that was like very impactful is fast forward about a year and a half from the time I meet Garrett.
Okay.
Friends with this kid, his name is Richard, and his whole family dies in a fire.
Oh.
Okay. 9 people dead. It was a Charbonneau family. And the way that it kind of like said in the news is that like everyone died in their sleep. So hopefully carbon monoxide kind of took them all out. But it was this huge family, and this kid Richard was in my grade, right? And we used to pick him up on our way to school. Wow. And that morning, my mom was like, we were supposed to go pick him up or whatever, and there was like police and ambulance and all that stuff, and they stopped us, and it's like, what's going on? And
Was he in the house?
Dude, he died with his whole family, man. There was 9 of them that all died. All of them died, dude. Every single one. Yeah. So this happens, right, with Richard. And obviously, like, for me and all my buddies, because he's our friend, right? He's in our homie group. We're having a real tough time of it. So I don't even remember who it was. Someone got the idea, let's do a seance. Because we want to say goodbye to Richard, you know?
Oh, boy.
I already knew that this was, like, not a good thing. But these guys were really, really down for it.
Yep.
So all of us skip school. And, like, basically have a group of kids that are 11, 12. And all of them go missing. That's all of us. And people are looking everywhere for us, apparently, right? We didn't know that people were looking for us, but because we're in the moment, we're like, who cares? We're just skipping some school. Right. And so what we did is went to this other kid's place. And again, when I talk about synchronicity and how things are connected, this kid ended up later finding out that he was like a serial like rapist molester.
Whoa.
At that time. He was like molesting his like really young siblings.
Oh my goodness.
He ended up going to prison for it because he didn't stop that. And by the time he turned 18, he actually went to prison. He had impregnated like a 13-year-old girl when he was 18, had kids with her. But anyway, so we go to that guy's place, and he has a bunch of trauma stuff going on in his family. His stepdad like abuses him, a lot of sexual abuse, physical abuse. And we decided to have the seance at this dude's place. Yeah.
Well, that adds up.
Yeah. And so we have the seance, like quite literally. We're in this like abandoned garage that's on the back of their property. It has literal dirt floor. Okay. And we build a little fire, start the fire, and we're like, so what do we do? And one of the guys like, you know, we just got to call forth his spirit and just say that we want to talk to him, you know? So we got the fire going. Yep. And again, it's kind of funny when you think about it, like who like, this before like Google was really like didn't even exist. Maybe you go to like Dogpile or Ask Jeeves or something like that. Ask Jeeves. And basically we stand around the circle, we held hands, we closed our eyes and bowed our heads, and again we got a little fire going in the middle. And someone's like, just say something nice about Richard. So we all go around, we say something nice. And after we all said something nice, the one dude who ended up being a child molester, he was like, give us a sign that you're here, right? Heard a crack of thunder. Whoa. Right? That freaked me out.
Yeah.
I dropped everyone's hands. I opened my eyes, and I was like, there should not be thunder right now. Like it's like bright outside, whatever.
Right.
So I back away from the fire. This other kid named Colton, he backs away from the fire, but everyone else stays there. It's like they're in a trance, right? And as I'm backing away towards the door, I look back at the fire, and I see in that fire Richard's face, and then it morphs into like this like horned demonic looking entity. Whoa. And then it morphs back to Richard's face. Oh, so I literally just take off running. Okay. Yeah. because again, all this other stuff with Garrett had already happened, right?
And you've come to this with already, like, you had Christianity in your life?
Already
at
had
that point?
Christianity.
So you're already thinking Jesus, you're thinking good and evil to some degree at that age. And
I'm like, this is a deceit. Like, they're going to think they're talking to Richard. They're really talking to some demon, some demonic entity. So I start running home, okay? Colton, he's kind of a little bit behind me, but he runs. He and I go different directions. There's not that many paths to get back to my apartment, but I'm running. And it was kind of like not completely dusk yet, but every light that I ran past, every light post turned on and off as I ran past it. And I'm just running. Get basically within like 400 yards of my house, there's this little open field. And all of a sudden, I feel like my body's frozen. I'm like running and I just feel like I'm like, it's hard to describe, but like I'm frozen, but it also feels like something is like pressing against me and holding me. And I couldn't move, man. And I was like, again, I just, in my mind, this feels demonically. It's like there's a feel to it. It's weird to describe. And I was like, plead the blood of Jesus. And then I fell to the ground, got home. Now, again, all of us boys had all skipped school, right? Our friend had just died. Town was out looking for us, basically. I get home. My dad is furious. He's like, where have you been? What did you do? I'm crying, right? And I'm like, Dad, I saw Richard's face and there's demons and I was being held. And my dad is like, A, I have no idea what you're talking about. B, I don't believe you. Because my dad, he practiced Islam. And when my mom would do our Christian stuff, like my dad would just be like, whatever you guys believe. My mom, she like is more comforting, but she's like, you guys all left. You skipped school. You didn't tell anyone. Like, and all this is happening. And so, and I'm like, this is just this wild experience, right? And Colton, right, the other kid who was not that far behind me, the same thing happened to him. He was being held, and then he said he just suddenly fell. He didn't say anything, though. So it's almost like my pleading the blood of Jesus also helped his case, because he was like, because I didn't even care about him. I was trying to get home, bro. I'm seeing demons that are looking like my friend or whatever. So so again, this is, at this point, I'm not even 12 yet, right? So I've had like all of these multiple experiences experiencing this. And so my mom decided it would be a pretty good idea to try and give me some more formal training. And funny, so I'm from this small town in North Dakota called Devil's Lake, which,
of course,
again, synchronicity, right?
Is that all happening at Devil's Lake?
This is all happening in Devil's Lake,
that's
North
the name
Dakota.
of a book you need to write.
Dude, I'm telling you.
That's a whole thing.
Is there a history there?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. Basically, the town itself was founded on like a dry lake bed, and the interpretation that the settlers came up with was that it was Devil's Lake, but the locals, like the indigenous people, they called it like mystic spirit waters, and just based off of kind of the land formation and where the sun would set, it would cast that, basically orange red, so it looked like blood. And so the Europeans were like, oh, that's Devil's Water right there, Devil's Lake.
Write it down.
Write it down. We're going to name this town. This is what's going to be. All this happened at Devil's Lake. And so in our town, we have a Bible camp called Lakewood Park Bible Camp. And they actually done a documentary on it called Camp Jesus.
Is this before you or afterwards?
This was after me.
Okay.
But yeah, they did a documentary on it because like it's a church. It's basically a Bible camp area that people can come out and rent out.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that came through, again, synchronicity, is they had a literal camp called Hellfighters. Okay.
Yes.
Literally.
This is it.
Okay. Hellfighters, and it was based off of a Bible passage, Ephesians 6, verses 9 through 12. And it was talking about like, battling against the principalities of darkness, right? Armor of God, the whole 9 yards. That was like the premise of this Bible camp. Okay. So I go to this Bible camp, and they're literally teaching us like, hey, there's demons that are everywhere, and if you need to fight them, here's what we do, right?
Sick.
And it was wild, dude.
Sick.
It was like a whole week going to this Bible camp, and at one point, there was this, like we did this mosh pit thing, and this is important too. I think when you talk about these demonic entities and all this, people sometimes forget, well, there's the other side of the equation, right? There's God, there's angelic properties, right? And I've experienced those as well.
Right.
I've seen like literal people being healed in front of me, right? I've seen this. And an example at this Hellfighters Hellfighters camp, we were doing like a mosh pit, and this kid broke his arm. Okay, this kid broke his arm, and like it wasn't out of the arm, but it was mangled. You could see it.
Oh yeah.
And the guy that was leading this group, he was like, "We're gonna lay hands and pray on this young man." We did it, man.
What?
And his arm, dude, like Like we were all literally putting our hands on his arm, right? And his arm like reset, like
That's
the wildest
wild.
thing ever, right?
I hope you saved like a shirt from this. You have that shirt that says Hellfighters. Like,
Dude,
That's
I know.
amazing.
It's crazy. It's crazy.